You're listening to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans.
See the club for how I see it. It's a fantastic club.
Fonte with a scooping header.
The players to grasp that and understand what it is and what we're about here.
It's infield to Mane, 25 yards out. Lovely ball for Bella. Onside, 1-0. Blue foul shot. Oh my word!
He ran around the pitch like Bambi on ice. It was very, very embarrassing to watch.
And now, your host, Matt Markstone.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans. My name is Matt Markstone. I'm the host of the show, and no matter where you are, no matter how you may be listening, whether this is your first time or you've been here before, thank you for making the show part of your day. I hope that you enjoy it. This is episode 99 of the Southampton Delivery Podcast, and one that will be remembered as the one that was recorded entirely before Mark Hughes was sacked by the Southampton Football Club. So I talked with Dan Hargraves, and there was a ton to talk about. And Dan, you may recognize his voice from the Saints View, where he is on the YouTube channel. That's also on Twitter and Instagram. He's also a presenter and the editor for Talk Saints, which is at Talk Saints. And links to all of those things are in the show notes, along with Dan's personal account, which is at Dan Hargraves _, both on Instagram and Twitter. But Dan joined me to talk about the midweek cup match against Leicester, the impact that may have had when we went into the game against United, the kind of good start we had to the match, going 2 goals up on a big club, even if they're in a big club in bad form. That was a pretty nice feeling there for about 20 minutes. And then we kind of did what we normally do, or what we've been accustomed to this season, which is allow other teams back into the game. And so there was a lot to talk about, but I, to be honest, did not think that Mark Hughes would lose his job. And to prove that, I said this. Mark Hughes is, I think, safe right now. I don't, regardless of the result yesterday, unless we go out and get blown out 6-0 maybe, I think he's safe simply because the people at the club that are there to make a managerial decision haven't really been responsible for making managerial decisions, overall. So yes, that aged very, very well, and we could have pulled that out, but Dan and I spoke well before Mark Hughes was released. This podcast was basically done before then, but if I can get Dan back on the phone before I release this, we'll talk about Hughes's release and maybe a little bit about some of the new potential replacements. But that basically works as the intro. Dan's been on the show before. He knows how this works. He did a fantastic job. I, however, had a bit of a nightmare, so I apologize for the interruptions. Me misquoting goals and things, but anyway, I hope you enjoy the chat. And here is my conversation with Dan Hargraves, who's at Dan Hargraves _ on Twitter and Instagram. We'd like to welcome back to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, Dan Hargraves. You can find him on Twitter and Instagram at Dan Hargraves _ He's associated with a number of accounts online. Wow, that was difficult. But Dan, welcome back to the show, and thanks for joining me.
Yeah, really good to be back.
Yeah, man. So, let's just get caught up with what you've been up to since the last time we spoke, because you've been here before, and you were doing some writing and stuff. But what have you been up to in the terms of media and things like that in the past, say, 6-7 months or so?
So I think the first thing we could say is that I became head editor of Talk Saints' new website, which has gone well. We're finding it a little bit difficult to get articles up consistently, but it's been really nice being associated with that account. Cameron, who started it, set it all up. He's been doing it for about 5 years as starting off as an Instagram account, now on Twitter. He's done really well, and it's been really nice to be associated with that account. And through that job, being given that role, I'm now also doing some stuff for the Instagram account. So you may see me on when it's match day. I do some stuff on the story where I cover the game. If I'm going, then I'll film or I'll take pictures or I'll sort of cover it. So in that sense, it's been, really nice to be with an account that's already really well known in the Southampton community.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I get recognised now for it, and it's just crazy. And then very recently, I say recently, like in the last month, me and some other guys have set up a new YouTube channel where we're just generally talking about saying, I think you would label it as a fan channel, but I don't want to call it that because obviously we've got a fantastic fan channel already in the Ugly Inside.
Mm-hmm. But
that's sort of a platform where I can sort of practice presenting, I guess, talk about Saints, and then is another channel for people to watch if they want another bit of an extra fix for Southampton, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and you were running your own channel there for a while on YouTube, so it seems like you keep finding yourself kind of in front of the camera, which is good. And it seems to me like that you enjoy it. So it's nice to see you back doing that. In addition to all of the other stuff, I guess over the summer, I think you took a trip to Mexico. You were all the way, I think, in my time zone even. How was that?
I wasn't far off it. I can tell you that. I definitely wasn't far off it.
What was that? What was that plane flight like?
I don't remember most of it because I was asleep. But I think British Airways always do a good service. The time zone was weird though. It was quite far back.
I forget. Were you there when the team was doing any kind of preseason stuff? Like, did you have to get up and watch a match at an odd hour or no?
No. The day I flew out, we had the last friendly against Gladbach. And then we had the Burnley game. I was there. And then I flew home the day we played Everton. So I was pretty much there for the start of the Premier League season. I didn't really miss too much because it wasn't too exciting. But they didn't have the games on TV, but I sort of was able to follow them on Twitter. And then I came back, went away again. So it took me until Crystal Palace away from actually go to a game this season, which was probably the best one out of all the season that I could have started off with.
Yeah, man. But I mean, in addition to kind of all of that, what have you made of our season so far? There's been kind of a lot of stuff going on. I mean, we have injuries, we have yellow card suspensions, we have, we've been knocked out of the cup now, or the EFL Cup at least. But it's just been kind of a weird kind of run of games, and people are calling for Hughes' job. So we have kind of a lot of stuff to cover. But if you don't mind, I think we just start with the Carabao Cup. We won't spend a ton of time on it. The game, of course, was postponed because of the helicopter accident crash, and rightly so. But we reschedule it. We travel up to Leicester for a midweek match, and when the lineup comes out, you kind of assume that there was going to be some rotation. You assume Gunn was going to get a chance, but the rest of it, man, like, I don't know. What did you make of that lineup when it came out?
I thought it was promising. I'm not going to lie to you, Matt. I thought we didn't really need a quarterfinal in the cup, especially against Manchester City, because look, if we'd gone through, I think we would have been playing City and then Huddersfield something like 3 days later, and then the typical December run would continue. We've got games sort of 2 or 3 every week. I thought the lineup was all right. I wanted to see Vestergaard come back in. We obviously saw Valerie, which was a surprise for me.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of Obafemi start. I think it was all positive. But I think it was also good because we could see that if it had gone well, which obviously it did, we could take that into the Man United game and potentially other Premier League games. And obviously it went well. The team that started, obviously, Valerie impressed on his debut. Vestergaard seemed quite solid. And obviously those two players specifically came into the side in the Premier League.
Yeah. And it's a different kind of a look, but you think of a back five or a back three, and then you look at, one, we're suffering with some injuries in different places, different parts around the pitch, but also we are going to be up against, we're up against Spurs, we're up against United, we're up against Chelsea, we're up against some of these bigger teams in this run, and we're going away for several of those. You would kind of expect us to maybe set up semi-defensively and look to hit on the counter, and with those guys up front, with Redmond and Obafemi, that seems to be kind of the lineup we might want. So you could see it maybe as a test for that, to see how it worked, and then I think when we roll it into what happened on Saturday against United, it's not that far off. but we'll get there. I mean, is that kind of in line with is that in line with kind of what you were thinking?
Yeah, I think that's definitely right. I didn't really think in terms of the sort of counter-attacking football, but definitely that maybe we will be sitting back against in the games against the bigger sides. But look, I think we were pretty dominant, especially in the first half against Manchester United. Okay, yes, we got pipped back 2, but we actually took a 2-goal lead, which was brilliant to see. But it wasn't the case of what we saw in the Chelsea game when we went to the 5 at the back and sort of sat back for the entire game and tried to hit on the counter. We were sort of first at everything, really, really good flow in our attack and our play. It didn't look like we were set up to counter. It looked like we were set up to have extra numbers in defence, but it didn't look like to me that we were trying to be quite conservative and hope that we would get a chance. It looked like we were trying to get on the front foot, trying to sort of ask questions of United, and that's exactly what we did.
Yeah, absolutely. In that game, target plays, which you expect. Valerie, like you said, was a little bit of a shock, but Cedric has been, I don't want to say struggling, but he hasn't been great defensively, and a lot of people, seems like him and Hoot are drawing the majority of the criticism in terms of defensively, at least. Austin's gotten a lot up front, and we won't even talk about him because he hasn't been involved. So,
No.
But to see Valerie come in and play the way he did, I thought he was great. To see Target come in and do just fine, but then suffer the head injury, and then you have Cedric come on to play essentially as a right wing back, which he then again played yesterday. So, or against United. So coming off of that penalty loss against Leicester City, did you think that was going to have a negative impact on Saturday, or do you think that because of the kind of the style of play or the type of game we played, that it was going to be okay in terms of moving forward?
I think that you can always worry that, penalty defeat may be a bit demoralising, but if I'm the team, I know that we were very close and maybe arguably should have won the game. Obviously you got the goal disallowed, so you could argue that maybe we could have got away with that if VAR wasn't in use. It shouldn't have stood, so it was fair enough. But I think they would have seen that their performance was really solid, really promising, and they shouldn't have been disheartened by it going out on penalties. And we saw on Saturday that they weren't disheartened. They really went for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And once again, Redmond with another good performance midweek, and then again yesterday with the man of a match performance against United. So big day for Valerie and Obafemi, who both got their first Premier League starts, and I thought both of them did well enough. Obafemi looks at times, though, to be slightly hesitant. He maybe had 1 or 2 chances that he maybe made a wrong decision or whatever, but he really put himself about otherwise, and I thought he did just fine up front. But I think Redmond, for me, kind of stole the show in terms of an attacking sense.
No, well, I think you could argue he was responsible for the first one, finding Obafemi, who finds Armstrong. I disagreed with Redmond getting man of the match. I thought Lamina was standout. That's personally, but yeah, you could definitely say Redmond stole the show in an attacking sense. Forward passes all the time, always looking to make that run. The final product still isn't really there for me, because some of his crosses or his balls into the box just instantly got blocked away. But he's got an intent. And I think that's really positive to see. We know how quick he is. We know how skillful he can be. And it seemed like he executed all of his qualities bar sort of the final ball in most instances.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be something that has to develop. I mean, we weren't even getting to that spot last season, so I think his confidence wise, he's much better this season. And like you said, he was essentially responsible for that first goal, because those United defenders, and even in instances leading up to this, he drew in 2 or 3 of them and was able to keep the ball, find Obafemi, who actually did very well to find Armstrong there. And Armstrong's shot, you kind of look at the angle, and man, that's a tough angle to beat a keeper of De Gea's quality. And he did it brilliantly. And that was, I think it was deserved in terms of the way the game was going so far. And I was pretty happy with that. Of course, having known the final score, I didn't celebrate too much.
No, I think if you're going on to Armstrong's goal, it's a fantastic finish. I mean, it's placed, but it's a rocket. It goes in so quickly. You watch it on the replay, you know, you can say De Gea is obviously top goalkeeper. No goalkeeper's going to stop that. They can't think. No goalkeeper has the reaction speed to get down that quickly and palm it away. Mm-hmm. It was an excellent shot. In regards to Obafemi's involvement, that was fantastic. But I think I do agree with you, Matt, in this sense that he does look a little bit lost sometimes. Not because he's a poor quality. He's obviously got quality, but I think, you know, he's 18 years old. This is his, fourth Premier League appearance? Maybe fifth, because he made one last year. Mm-hmm. He's still learning. It's his first start. He'll get there. He's a striker that doesn't offer anything else that the other strikers do. Ings and Gabbiadini, relatively clinical. Austin sometimes, well, I think Austin right now is a bit lazy and unfit. Same with Shane Long. But Obafemi, he's got pace. From what we've seen in the under-23s, he's clinical. He hasn't really had that many chances in terms of goal scoring besides the one in the cup game, which is a shame. But I think part of that is down to him being a little bit hesitant.
Yeah, and that will come. He will get better with more chances and more time. And to be honest, other than Ings, none of our forwards are really scoring all that much anyway. So why not give him a run, especially coming up against some of these teams where I think they will be vulnerable, on the counterattack. And you have a guy who I think is best running onto balls in the channels and doing that. If you have him and Redmond both up there, hopefully with Armstrong getting forward, possibly Lamina and Højbjerg getting forward a little bit, I think that suits us well as it can be for a team who's sitting, in 19th place or wherever we're at currently. So, or maybe we're in 18th based on goal difference, I think.
We're 18th. I think a point of safety.
Yeah.
Maybe two. It might be two.
If we can just go back just to the very beginning of the match real quick. I've had some, I don't want to say arguments. I've had some discussions with people through social media, mostly on direct messages and email and stuff like that, but like nothing out in public. But some people, I don't know if you're hearing this, think that Gunn should be getting more starts than McCarthy now. Like McCarthy is, the team is conceding so many goals, maybe that McCarthy needs to take a step back, and then he comes out in this match and he kind of miskicks that ball, and we almost go down a goal right away. I will be honest that I don't think a lot of the goals have been McCarthy's fault. I think a lot of it has been down to just people not marking runners, not staying with runners. And I would say yesterday against United, the same type of thing, that like you look at, some of our defenders getting turned and Vestergaard not running with Lukaku on one of them. And it's just like, man, like this is the same thing. It seems like that left center back spot is maybe cursed or something. But back to the original question, like, do you think maybe that Gunn should be replaced by McCarthy, or is that, in your opinion, not something that should even be considered at this point?
Goalkeeper's not a problem. The goalkeeper's not a problem for me. Okay, yeah, he had a mistake early on in the game. Not being funny, but I'm pretty sure that's one of maybe 2 or 3 at the most mistakes that he's made this season. At the end of the day, he's got more clean sheets than some of the league's top goalkeepers. Mm-hmm. And okay, they were a 0-0 draw, so the results haven't really reflected onto the whole team as a whole. But individually, I don't think he's really put a foot wrong. You can't blame him really for any of the goals we've conceded. Okay, you want to talk about the mistake he made yesterday? They didn't capitalise on. So I don't really see why we would talk about it anymore if people are going to use that as an argument for why Gunn would come in. Gunn, how old is he? 22, 23, about that?
Yeah, he's young, and I think is kind of, he couldn't have come in this season and assumed he was going to be the Premier League starter. Like, challenge for the spot, sure, yeah, but no.
I'm sure they would have told him when he signed the contract, we're signing you as a future prospect, we're not signing you for the season. I'm sure he would have been told that. He's only had one season as a professional footballer, and that was in the Championship, and it was against a side that finished mid-table for Norwich. Now, he's a good goalkeeper. He's obviously a good goalkeeper, but I don't really see the need to McCarthy. Obviously, if McCarthy was to, his form was to decrease, to fall, if he was to have a dip, and we did need to replace him like we did need to replace Forster a year ago, Gunn's a great replacement. That's why we bought him. But there's no need to replace him right now. It is not his fault that we've been conceding so many. I think it is down to the centre-backs.
Yeah. the atmosphere at St. Mary's yesterday after the first goal seemed to kind of go up a few notches, and the fans were loud. And I mean, home form has been so bad in recent years, I guess, year and a half.
Yeah.
That, there's been a lot of discussion about that on social media. Charlie Austin has come out and said it. You have even Joe Prince Wright, who works for NBC, had mentioned in a tweet that, the players were really wanting the fans to get behind, and fans, I think, are tired of hearing that. Like, it's hard to sit there and say we don't have a right to be frustrated, or we don't have a right to maybe express that frustration. And I can say that the majority of the time, if the game is tight, if the game is being well played, that the fans are good, but it doesn't take very much for the fans to kind of go we've seen this before, and kind of maybe pack it in, which I think at this point is totally fair, because we've had, it's like one home win and for however long it's been, forever. So
at 12 months.
Yeah. I mean, and so I understand it, but what I really want to get to is the fact that the crowd was great yesterday. The crowd was fantastic after the first goal. And then when Cedric puts that free kick in, which I didn't see coming, the crowd seemed to go absolutely nuts. So when that goal did go in, and what was your kind of experience being in the stands? Was it just on TV that I was getting that feeling, or was that a real kind of reaction from the stands?
Well, I can tell you this, Matt. I don't think I've celebrated a goal scored at home probably since Booth against West Brom. It was ridiculous. It was so good. Not just because it was an excellent goal. Technically, it's because it puts you 2-0 up at home against a top side, Manchester United. Okay, they're not in great form, but they're still a top side. I don't think I've ever seen us actually go 2-0 up against Manchester United, and it's been ages since we've gone 2-0 up against a top six side. So all of that sort of bottled into one. Just, I think 30,000 fans in the stadium just erupted because of, not just because the goal was so fantastic and so unpredictable, because what was riding on it and sort of what it meant.
Yeah, and when you look at Cedric taking a free kick, he's never on the videos. He's not one of these guys that's on the videos from training ground taking the free kicks. A lot of times it's, Bertrand's up there, he's out injured. James Ward-Prowse not in the starting lineup. Redmond can take him. Vestergaard can take him. He took that one for Denmark at training during international duty. That was an absolute rocket. But to see him do that, and in the build up to it, by the way, Lamina does well to kind of win the ball back, get a shot off, and then gets tackled by Rashford. It's a pretty bad tackle from Rashford on that. But when you're looking at who's standing over it, you think it has to be Redmond's going to hit it, but Cedric had picked the ball up, put it down. And when he takes that is, I mean, it's perfect, right? There's nothing De Gea can do. It's got dip, it's got swerve, it's got everything you want in a free kick. That's it.
I think if that goal had been scored against us, some fans would have complained. Obviously, they're always pessimists, but I think generally you can't complain about conceding that goal. That's just excellent execution. It is perfect. You can't question the wall. You can't question the goalkeeper. He's whipped that over the wall. They can't get to it and placed it so far into the top corner that no goalkeeper would get to that. Okay, if I was a United fan, I would argue, Rashford doesn't really need to give away the free kick. But I think besides that, you just have to stand back and clap. Obviously, we didn't really get the benefits from it because we didn't win the game. But maybe we'll look back on that and think that was the turning point in our season if we are to go on an upwards run.
Yeah, and yesterday was Cedric's 100th Premier League appearance. It was nice for Cedric to be able to score on his 100th appearance. It's his first Premier League goal for the club. And when he first came into the team, I think there were a lot of expectations placed on him because he was coming off of the partnership with Jose Font, being a Portuguese international, but he hadn't scored. The last time he scored was 2013 for Sporting Lisbon. Was the last time he scored in a top flight league, and so that goal coming for him, I think, was I don't know. I don't think it's something we can rely on, but the fact that Danny Ings is out, a lot of our strikers aren't scoring. The goals are going to have to come from elsewhere. And we got one from a midfielder who seems to have an eye for goal now, and a defender off of a free kick. I thought that was great. Like you said, it put us 2-0 up. And kind of going into that, I know United have the ability to come back from a deficit, and we have shown again and again and again kind of the likelihood to concede a lead. But at 2-0 up in the first 20 minutes, was there any doubt in your mind? Was that creeping in, or were you kind of hoping that we were going to be able to see this out?
I had a feeling we could see it out, but I said to my friend who was sat next to me, 2's not enough. I said we needed to get a third to sort of make ourselves feel a little bit more comfortable. Especially when Lukaku scored, I said, look, that's what I mean. They're going to go and equalise now. I didn't think it'd be that quick. In all honesty, I thought it would be 2-1 at half time and then they'd come back in the second half. But I think quite a few fans are actually quite relieved that we didn't blow the game completely and we didn't lose, because that was definitely a possibility that was creeping through my mind at half time. You know, we could really go off and lose this, not even by one. Maybe they'll score a couple in the second half, especially when they've got Martial, Lingard, Mata all on the bench that they can put on. Luckily enough, they didn't really do too much in the second half. Okay, they dominated the ball, but in terms of clear-cut chances, I don't really think they created another one.
No, and I think the Saints showed a lot more energy yesterday. There was some youthfulness in the side, and I don't just mean that Obafemi and Valerie were there, but the idea that we had to go and attack them, and we had to go and try to press them and force them to make mistakes, and realize that, yes, it's Manchester United, but it's not Manchester United of old. This is a team that is struggling for form. This is a team that is playing 3 center backs, even though 2 of them are midfielders, and that they are there to be kind of got at. And I think we did a pretty good job. I don't think Lamina let Pogba, other than maybe the second goal. I think no, it was the first goal. I think other than maybe not pressing him right away for that pass that he played forward. But for the most part, Lamina was all over Pogba. Valerie was making tackles and things like that, and they all kind of stood up to the challenge. And I thought it was pretty good. Like, granted, we did concede 2 goals and we were up by 2, but I mean, the fact that the team we put out there, you don't really, I don't know. You look at it and say they're young, maybe they're inexperienced, maybe they aren't going to be able to stand up to the pressure, but I think they did just an excellent job overall.
Yeah, I definitely think they did a good job. I did worry for Valerie a little bit, given that Pogba was obviously a World Cup winner with France. Valerie's a young Frenchman, maybe he'd sort of be in awe of Pogba. It was anything but. Pogba, I don't know if you've seen the clip of Pogba's dreadful touch to Armstrong. Literally, he's just in midfield and he takes one touch and Armstrong takes it straight off him. And I think that summarised his performance. If we're talking about Pogba specifically, Lamina bossed him in every department, passing accuracy-wise, defensive-wise, he was stronger. And, it was great to see.
Yeah, I thought our midfield, Lamina, Højbjerg, both great. Armstrong, fantastic. And like you said, Valerie was great. And there was one tackle, it might have been on Shaw, kind of right on the edge of the area, where Shaw just goes kind of flying over him, and Valerie, the ball kind of squirts away, but Valerie made an outstanding tackle, and I just thought, like, he didn't look out of place at all. And we don't want to overhype him, of course. We don't want to say, oh, he's ready to be an everyday starter, because I'm not sure that's it. But I do think there is some promise there, and I think it's good to see, some youth players back in the team. And we have a question on it, so we'll kind of save that for later. United did get one back in the 34th minute through Lukaku. I want to say, Pogba just had time to play that pass to Rashford, who got a little bit lucky with his touch. He outmuscled Yoshida, which we've seen in the past, but then he got a little lucky with the touch to go back through Steven's legs. But then Vestergaard, who had gone with Lukaku, didn't track him right away. There was a slight hesitation, and that was enough for Lukaku to be open, and he wasn't going to miss that shot. He generally scores against teams who are in the bottom of the table, and he did that yesterday.
Yeah, but I think the thing with Romelu Lukaku, okay, he gets a load of bad publicity, but you put him in 1-on-1 with any goalkeeper and you would back Lukaku to score.
Yeah,
you would. He's a fantastic finisher. Okay, people criticise him for his touch, maybe his passing ability, but 1-on-1, you would back Lukaku's score. I think overall it's Vestergaard's mistake, only because if you look back at the replay, he's looking in completely the opposite direction of Lukaku's run. Who he's looking out for, I've got no idea. And then he realises Lukaku's running in, and it's too late. But I think if I'm going to blame someone, I think Vestergaard has to take the hard shoulder for that one.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate, I think, at least from a fan standpoint, because we want someone to be that strong starting center back that we can rely on week in, week out, because Hoot up until this point has been in the lineup, but a lot of Saints fans don't have faith in him. And I think I've stood up for him in the past, but I think recently he definitely has had like too many mistakes, and he needed to be kind of taken out of the firing line, let it die down a little bit, let fans kind of forget about that stuff, and give him a chance to build some confidence back up, because I think his confidence has to be shot, especially after giving that ball away for Fulham's third goal, I think, last week. But anyway, yeah, I think Vestergaard, as good as he is in the air, as comfortably as he is on the ball, as strong as he is, there was that, like, he doesn't have the pace to make up for losing track of a runner, and you can't lose track of the team center forward. That is your job as a center back, essentially, you know? So anyway, going into halftime, I know it was tied. I know Rashford did well for the second goal and Herrera. That was a kind of a nice finish. I don't know. I wasn't expecting that type of finish. Not from him, not from anybody really on the pitch. But I thought it was well worked. Whatever, they did it. But it goes into 2-2, and at that point, were you worried that we were going to then come out and concede in the second half?
Yeah, 100%. I had a tiny bit of hope that we would go on and win it, but United have Martial, Lingard, Mata all on the bench, all could have come on. I was quite surprised that Mourinho took into the 70th minute to actually make a substitution. I thought he might have changed something up at half time. Obviously he didn't. He waited to bring someone on, but then he did bring Martial and Lingard on, but probably too late for them to have made a difference. And so I could see why United fans would be frustrated with Mourinho. But I was surprised that they didn't create really a clear-cut chance. I said to you before, I expected United to go out, start the second half brightly. They did. In fairness, they kept a lot of the ball, but they didn't really fashion a clear-cut chance because, crosses into the box, but they weren't met. They weren't good enough. And that's down to individual quality or a lack of.
Yeah, I mean, you speak to the fact they had a lot of the ball. They had something like 60% possession almost through that first half, but we had more shots than them. We had as many shots on target as they did. We were definitely in that game, and we deserved to have, if not a lead, we deserved to at least be tied. And the majority of the game was taking place in the middle of the pitch, and it was kind of split on either kind of attacking third. So I thought we were really well in the game, and I thought, like we said, we had played well. And there, other than maybe some individual errors that led to goals, I didn't really find very much to complain about going into halftime, other than we kind of worry that we were maybe going to miss out on on some points, and we did. In the second half, Lamina and Pogba wind up both getting booked for fouls on each other. That's Lamina's fifth, so he's out for the Spurs match midweek, which raises some questions in terms of, what our midfielders look so good. It's been one of the really the kind of high points of the team. What does that look like now, especially with Romeu playing for the under-23s midweek? So I think we'll see maybe him come in for that, but we'll get to that later. I'm trying to think of a lot of things that happened during the second half, and I can't put my finger on a lot of clear-cut chances. It seemed to be completely different from the first half in terms of intensity, in terms of chances and things like that. But as you were watching the second half, were there any real moments of brilliance that stood out to you?
If I think back to a chance, Højbjerg had a header that just went past the post, but I don't think it got picked up on any of the sort of highlight shows. Yeah, I think there was still intensity. There was definitely desire to go on and win the game from the host, which was promising to see. And a lot of those attacks came through Redmond, but it's like what I was saying to you earlier, the final ball wasn't really there. So you skip past a couple of defenders, get to the edge of the box, but then his ball in would either be blocked or missed, or just not good enough, which was a shame because he'd done really all the hard work and couldn't execute the final part of the attack that would have led to a goal or at least a shot. So look, I think they tried. They just didn't have the quality to kill the game off.
Yeah, absolutely. I think before we get to any questions or anything like that, it's, yes, we got a draw. We got a point that I didn't think we were going to get. I didn't see us getting anything from the game. And I'll be honest when I say that I have to say that I think I'm doubting I don't want to say the quality of the team because I think the players are good, but I'm doubting the ability for us to kind of get out of this kind of funk that we're in. We're not winning games. We're not holding leads. And I struggle to think that against a team like United or anybody else really that we're going to be able to do that. So to see us, for me, hold out a lead for the entire second half, to kind of limit a lot of United's chances to individual matchups all across the pitch, to be in those and to win those. I thought that the team was, I thought it was a huge positive. I thought we were better defensively throughout the second half. Like you said, I thought Redmond was great. But like one of the things that we have to realize is that is now 20 points, I believe, dropped from winning positions since Hughes took over.
Yeah, it's something like that.
And that's a huge issue, and that's one win at home in the last 18. So that's all the games you get or one fewer game that you get in an entire season with only one win. And that can't happen. This can't be a thing if we're actually going to try to stay in the league,
Yeah, look, I think part of the statistics in terms of what Hughes has done is a little bit unfair on him, only because when he came in, the side was so sort of dreaded of confidence. But look, at the end of the day, he had a whole summer with them in pre-season to sort of kick out any sort of worries that they may have had, or they still obviously have from last season. And if it's sort of 19, 20, maybe even 21 points from winning positions, that's shocking. But what that also says is, or reiterates really, where the recruitment's been poor in terms of management, because Pellegrino was the exact same. I can't particularly think right now of games that we threw away under Pellegrino. I mean, the Crystal Palace at home last January stands out massively for me as one of those sort of games where we had a lead and we threw it away. But it's a reoccurring problem. And, you can question the management, but I think sometimes you've got to go a bit further than that and sort of question the mentality of the players.
Yeah, I think that, we definitely have had issues in seasons leading up to this. We definitely have issues. I think that run, from the training pitch to the boardroom and everywhere in between. And that was something that the commentators kind of brought up, was like, and I'd be interested to hear your opinion on this, is like Mark Hughes is, I think, safe right now. I don't, regardless of the result yesterday, unless we go out and get blown out 6-0 maybe, I think he's safe simply because the people at the club that are there to make a managerial decision haven't really been responsible for making managerial decisions, overall. We don't necessarily associate Ralph Kruger with making football decisions. He said it before. That's not his role. That was Les Reed's role. So I have to say that, Hughes is likely probably to go. If I had to bet on it, if I had to say whether he's going to go or not, I would say he will go when that role that Les Reed filled is filled by 2 or 3 people, however they chop up the responsibilities. But one of those people is going to have a guy or someone that they want to bring in. And I think that will be when we see Hughes, the leash shorten. He's going to get fewer and fewer chances to kind of stay around. Unless, of course, you think of the monetary side of it, where we've already paid off 2 managers and we can't really afford to do it again.
I think we could have. Well, I don't know with the ownership. I think we could afford it, but I do get frustrated with some of the fans. Not all of them, to be fair. That say, Hughes out on social media publicly, sort of always slating him. Look, it's not been great, but at the end of the day, if you're looking in the long term, we've got a board that know nothing about football. And so if we're saying sack the manager and get someone new in, who's to say that the guy they bring in isn't worse? Because, if I can think of a recent example, West Brom, last season, got rid of Hughes quite early on, but they brought in Pardew, and that wasn't the correct decision, and so they had to sack him as well, pretty much when relegation was all but confirmed, and had to give the job for the rest of the season to the youth coach, who's obviously now the current manager, and they're doing well in the Championship. But that's not a risk we want to take. So I definitely think that the director of football appointment is crucial. I'm a bit surprised that it's taken this long, and a bit worried and disappointed, because I think, from what I've heard, there's a real mix over who was going to get the boot if he didn't win, or if he didn't get a result on Saturday, he was going to go. But I think if it gets to a point where he doesn't get a result at Cardiff, then they're going to have to get rid of him. I can't see how he could stay on when we lose it, or if we lose, a game as big as that. And then that's where it's worrying, because we don't have the man or woman, I don't know who they'll bring in to make the decision on a replacement manager that's not only going to keep us in the Premier League, but get us back into the table.
Yeah, I mean, looking ahead, you mentioned it, that Cardiff is a huge match. Huddersfield is a huge match. You can say West Ham's a big match too, simply because this is when you have chances. Those are the three games you would say, you got a chance to take something from it. We have Spurs, Arsenal, City, and Chelsea all before the second of the year, and that's just a brutal run of fixtures. But it's the way that it works out. I don't know. I don't want to overlook Tottenham completely, but that's a game that I wouldn't expect a lot from. I think the focus has to be on Cardiff, and now for the team. I mean, I guess as how much pressure is on the players for that match, seeing as how the opportunities to win points, against some of these teams that are coming up isn't great.
No, then that's what I worry about, because we don't play well when there's pressure. We took the lead in the Fulham game and we were able to come back from 2-1 down. But there was so much riding on that game, and they could feel it. I think it's the same with the Newcastle and Watford games at home. Obviously, we drew both of them, where really a win was the only decent result that we could have got. Yeah, especially with this sort of fragile mentality that we've sort of seen all season, really, I do worry for that game. Not necessarily because Hughes is a bad manager, because obviously he was able to get his side to go 2-0 up against Manchester United. Okay, yes, they've got picked back 2-2, but it's still a good result overall. I don't worry about the sort of tactics side from it. I worry about the actual team, how they approach the game, how they sort of think of the game. Knowing obviously they need to get a result, I think they care. They definitely play for the manager, but I think they're just scared for it to go wrong.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. And like we said before, United are United. Granted, they're down in 7th position currently, but that's still top half of the table, and they still, are likely to surprise everybody and wind up in some sort of European place, even if we don't think they deserve it because of the way they play or whatever. That seems to be kind of the team that they have this season, and we'll see kind of what they do in January, and all of that stuff. But all right, I think we have a couple of questions. I think we can kind of move on to now. We have some questions. One of them is from St. Kevin, who is at Moscow Mush, and he is part of the In That Number podcast, and you can find them on Twitter at Numbers Podcast, I believe. And he says, with 2 games against both the top 6 and the bottom 6 coming up, will we still be in the relegation zone at Christmas? So to you, I mean, what do you, with those games that we have coming up, I believe it's Spurs, Cardiff, Arsenal, and then Huddersfield. Where will we be?
Hopefully outside the relegation zone. I think it's definitely possible, especially if we pick up, I think even if we got maybe 4 points from those 4 games, it's so tight down the bottom. I don't know, I think if Cardiff and Huddersfield are huge. They're absolutely vital. But you could say, Arsenal's a home game. Their away form isn't spectacular. Okay, they're unbeaten for God knows how many games. But, we could get a point with a good performance like we saw on Saturday in that one. For me, I think we definitely have to win at least Cardiff or Huddersfield, because now I'm being a realist. I think 4 points from those 2 games plus a point against Spurs or Arsenal would be a decent run, and hopefully that should be enough to get us out of the relegation zone. It wouldn't push us up into mid-table. Of course, we'd still be sort of between 15th and 17th,
right,
around there. But I think outside of those sort of bottom three positions with those results.
Yeah, and I mean, watching some of these teams play recently, or at least looking at the results, Cardiff and Huddersfield have managed to pull themselves out of the relegation zone, which I don't think anybody predicted. I think people thought Fulham would be better off than where they're at. I don't think anybody saw Burnley down in the relegation zone, but there was always the talk that, the Europa League could hurt them a little bit. But then you start looking at even our results against Burnley. We had that 0-0 draw. Neither team looks very good. But all that said, as bad as our season's been, we are still in contention to kind of jump out of the relegation zone and move up a few places. But it's going to take us beating the teams around us to do that. And so I think you said something that's like 5 points from 4 games, right? Beat either Cardiff or Huddersfield, draw the other one, find a point else against Arsenal possibly, or Spurs, and that's it. Like, that's what we have to do. That is kind of, I would say, the bare minimum. I think a lot of people will be hoping for 6 points, possibly 7. But I think there we are maybe getting ahead of ourselves, since we only have 9 points now through 14 matches. But Justin Woodward, who's at JustinWoody76, says, with the emergence of a couple of youngsters, I believe he's probably referring to Valerie and Obafemi, how do you rate the youth system the last couple of years and what its future holds?
I think it's still got a bright future. I think the last couple of years it's been quite slow. We haven't really seen a fantastic amount of quality, because I think the main sort of player that you'll look at who's come through from the youth over the last couple of seasons is Jack Stevens. Mm-hmm. Obviously, he's breaking in now in the side. Excellent defender. He was outstanding on Saturday. Definitely a contender for man of the match. You could obviously say Josh Sims as well came through, but he's gone off on loan. He didn't actually manage to get a goal, however good everyone said he was. Same with Sam McQueen, a decent backup left back, but again shipped out on loan, couldn't make it into the first team. So yeah, I think it's slowed down a bit. I wouldn't be surprised if sort of Obafemi or Valerie games under their belt or a regular season. But, from those two particular players, they look comfortable. They look ready to play. And I think that's always going to be the case with Southampton. They really sort of get their players ready to get into the first team, whatever chance they get. They're ready to take it, which is, a credit to the youth staff. And it seems like we've got a few more youngsters who might be coming through given the success of the under-23 side this season.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big draws to the club for me was the fact that we developed a lot of players and we brought them into the first team. We incorporated them into the first team. And, I think every club goes through times where you can do that and it works. And then sometimes you're going to have it where it just doesn't work. You go through a dry spell, you miss on some players, you sell some players off, you loan some players out, whatever. But I think the fact that we do have a lot of players out on loan that maybe could have helped us, but our squad is so kind of bloated. We have so many players who are okay, that are in the squad right now, that I think it's difficult to keep some of these younger guys around, and you want them to get games. So maybe you sacrifice a little bit by sending them out, and hopefully they get some game time, some competitive matches instead of under 23 stuff. Whereas you have some guys on the actual first team or in and around the first team that their long-term future is probably doesn't lie at Southampton. That's at least kind of what I would hope is happening with some of these things. But looking at our next question here, this comes from Instagram, from @SaintsVerse. And it says, Lamina and Højbjerg are both unavailable. Who do you think will play, and how do you think we'll get on against them? I believe he's talking about Spurs, because that's the next match. And Lamina is suspended due to yellow card suspension, which is why we were missing Bertrand. Actually, Bertrand missed the midweek match, I think, and then now he had an injury, correct? Or he missed last weekend, but now he's got an injury.
Going on to the question, I was thinking about this. I think Romeo definitely should come in. And then it's a question between Ward-Prowse and Davis. Now, in terms of recent form,
let me ask you something before we get into this. Højbjerg's only got 4 yellow cards. So is Højbjerg suspended? No.
Right.
So
I've heard from other people that he's suspended, but I thought the same. I thought that was quite confusing. But if he is suspended, then I think we've got a pretty decent depth of midfielders. So if he is suspended, if we've got the stat wrong, and he is on 5 yellow cards, then I think you'd look at Ward-Prowse and Davis, but definitely I think Romeu for Lamina would be the obvious choice.
Okay, yeah, I'm not seeing anything for him being suspended now.
Okay.
I'm hoping that is just a rumor or somebody said it and then people ran with it. That's what I'm hoping. So if I'm wrong, I'm sure somebody will point it out. But like you said, we do have midfielders in the squad. The only thing I would hope is that they've been playing well. They've been playing well together, especially when you throw in Armstrong there. So like you want to keep that core together. You want them to get games. And Højbjerg wearing the armband in the absence of Ryan Bertrand has been a fantastic addition to the team. I think it's been great for him and for the rest of the club. So you want that to continue. If it can't continue midweek against Spurs, oh well. Hopefully we pick it back up against Cardiff because, like you said, that's really the match that you want. So you assume Romeu comes in. Davis has come off the bench twice now in a row, so maybe he gets a start. You also have James Ward-Prowse who can come in and do it. So I think it'll be something like that, and we'll probably see a formation similar to what we saw against United with the back three. Granted, I don't know who it will be, and I don't know if Bertrand will be fit in that time to come back in and play left back, or if Cedric will step over there and do that again. So it'll kind of be up to them to do that. But I don't know, like, I guess just looking forward into going into the week, like we'll talk again with another guest after Cardiff, but like looking at Spurs and Cardiff, like how do you feel going into those games? Do you think there are enough positives there that coming out of the United game that we can take and move forward? Or do you think that we are kind of back at square one where we have to find something to build on?
No, I think there are definitely positives to take, not just from the United game, the Leicester Cup game. You could argue in sort of the attacking sense in the Fulham game, there's definitely positives to take. Looks like we're scoring goals, which is promising to see. Armstrong's in great form. He's a great creative spark that seems to be fashioning these chances from which we're scoring, which is great to see because that's been a problem. If we can keep scoring consistently, that'd be fantastic. I think the main worry really is shipping the goals. How the defence going to react. It'd be interesting to see how that sort of the same back five that played against United and Leicester would do against one of the so-called lesser teams in Cardiff, because obviously Spurs is going to be another typical test because they've got a fantastic attack line. Mm-hmm. But I would stick with that team for the next couple of games, and if it doesn't work out, okay, but I can't really see a better option right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that should probably be what we see. And just kind of now that we're on the yellow card thing, I'm starting to think about it. Looks like Cedric and Højbjerg are both on 4 yellow cards. Romeu, who's played considerably less time, is on 3, which is not surprising because it seems like every time he comes on. But this would be, I would say that if Cedric plays against Spurs, it's very important that he doesn't get a 5th yellow card. Like, we need a full strength team going into Cardiff. So to me, Højbjerg and Cedric, them just avoiding yellow card suspension for that match in particular will be great, especially because we don't know the fitness of Ryan Bertrand or Matt Targett, and we don't want to be, I don't know. I don't think we want to be in a position where we just don't have a left back. I think that would be bad. That's kind of, it's good when guys play in positions they know and can like and are good at. So that's all.
Yeah, completely.
All right. But Dan, I mean, this has been kind of a disaster on my part in terms of, I don't know what the edit will sound like when it's all done, but we've had interruptions. I've had dogs. I think I called out the wrong goal 4 or 5 times. So we'll see how this goes. But do you have anything else that you'd like to add before we kind of wrap this up?
So it's going on 100. Fantastic effort. And hopefully you can do another couple hundred more. Yeah.
Well, as long as everybody around here, as I look at my wife, is okay with it, I think it'll be fine. But yeah, I mean, this has been, now you've been on the show a couple of times. It's been a great experience. And, yeah, it's been, I've enjoyed kind of all of it, and I've learned a lot about just talking to people, about looking at a game. It's changed the way I kind of watch the game a little bit. And but like this, like just having a conversation with you, just going through all this has been the best part of it in terms of what this is all about. But yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. And you please keep doing the work that you were doing. I think it's good, and I'm glad to see you kind of continue to put yourself out there and continue to try new things. I think that's important. So keep that up.
Thank you very much.
All right, man. Well, we will link to the new Instagram, Twitter account in the show notes. It's the Saints View. We'll put the YouTube link in there as well. And we'll hopefully people will go and check that out. And we'll we'll be back, I guess, after Cardiff and Spurs. That does it for this episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you've enjoyed it. Now, I'd like to apologize to you. I've had a bit of a nightmare this episode. Made some mistakes, but hopefully you didn't notice because of the edit. Hopefully you don't notice that my cell phone is ringing a lot. It's a lot of notifications. The group chat is blowing up, and I do not know why. Oh. Southampton have parted ways with manager Mark Hughes. Well, looks like we got to call Dan back. Hey man, how's it going?
Good. Long time no see.
I know. Seriously, it's early, and I did not. I got woken up by all the notifications.
Oh, did?
Well, we'd like to welcome back to the Southampton Delivery Podcast. Less than 24 hours from when we last spoke, Dan Hargraves, we've had a bit of a change in circumstance surrounding the club, so welcome back. Mark Hughes is now is no longer the manager of the club, and we're looking at a replacement.
Yeah, and what? Well, okay, so starting off with how I found out the news, obviously my phone was vibrating in the middle of a lesson, and I was waiting, I was desperate to get out, and obviously I checked my phone because I was thinking, God, like something big with the club must have happened because I'm not this popular on a Monday morning, saw it, and firstly I was relieved, but then I was instantly worried about who all these sort of papers were linking us with. But I'm quite optimistic with who the names being sort of juggled around. The main one, Ralph Hasenhüttl. That's a very German name. Like, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. We'll get used to it if he does come. But yeah, obviously did very well at Leipzig. Also, Quique Sanchez Flores, it's not just Hasenhüttl who's been linked, and Flores, has Premier League experience, did relatively well with Watford. So I think if it's going to be one of those two, then I think we will be okay.
Yeah, talk about when you found out. I normally turn off all my notifications and I mute my phone at night just because my wife doesn't want to be woken up mostly. I've been asked to do that, I'll be honest. But last night there just seemed to be some weird kind of things happening in terms of how people were talking about the potential replacement. And so I left my notifications on, and needless to say, I my phone was going off pretty a lot more than normal. And when I kind of rolled over and saw the news, I was kind of like, well, I don't know if I can go back to sleep yet. So I've been awake for a little while. I fell back asleep, but yeah, it's been kind of a weird thing. But I think we were talking right before this. You mentioned almost similar timing, I think, to when Les Reed was let go. But
Definitely.
I think first, let's look back at last year when Hughes comes in. He's got 8 games to save us from relegation, and he manages to do kind of just enough to do it. And I think we were in a bad spot last year. So for him to come in and do that, I think was okay. I think it was, I think he did well enough, but nothing was really all that great, and a lot of people weren't happy with the appointment to begin with. You talked to a lot of fans who of teams he managed before. They weren't happy. They didn't think we were going to be happy with it. But I mean, coming into this season, I mean, do you think it's the right decision now? I know, earlier in the show we were probably different, but now looking back at it, and I was, maybe we're trying to be positive or whatever it is, and people will take it for what it is. But now, do you think this is the right decision now? And even though it looks like, we have some replacements lined up, and I know my big concern was who at the club is making this decision, but the Ralph Hasenhüttl looks to be, he's done some really good things with a lot of teams, so it looks okay. But how are you feeling about this now?
I think in terms of the timing, we've kind of got it right. I think if we'd waited sort of after the Cardiff game, and especially if the Cardiff game didn't go to plan, we would have waited too late. Like I genuinely fear that if we'd sacked him after a loss at Cardiff, that would have been too late. Personally, I would have gotten rid of him over the international break before the Fulham game. But obviously that wasn't the case. It was a defeat at Fulham, but then a point at United, so it was all right. But I think now's the time to sort of depart with him and sort of look forward, because there's a lot of games. There's a lot of games coming up, and some of them are winnable. Some of them we can definitely get results from. And if we can have a good sort of Christmas period, then we can definitely not only just sort of propel ourselves away from the relegation zone, but put ourselves into a strong mid-table position.
Yeah, it's a difficult kind of situation. You look at how fast the games are going to come. You look at what some of those games look like. Like we were talking earlier in the show, we have a ton of the Big Six kind of coming up, but we also have those two really crucial games in Huddersfield and Cardiff coming. And the hope is that we have a permanent manager in place. Kelvin Davis is going to take over for the Tottenham match midweek. And so, yeah, I would have thought that, if they were going to sack him, they would have done it over the international break. That seemed like a more appropriate time. But maybe this is the club having the replacement almost ready to go now, rather than just sacking the manager because there was an international break. So maybe this is a good choice from the club. And we can only hope that that's the case. So, in terms of the potential replacements, it looks like Hasenhüttl is the, and I could be saying that completely wrong, and I'll apologize to everybody for that. But
that sounds good to me.
All right, yeah, we'll just go with it. I may have taken 1 year of German or 2 years of German in college. I was mostly drunk the entire time, but it's okay. If we go with Hasenhüttl, I guess, looking just kind of briefly over his stats and things of what he did at RB Leipzig and a couple of the other clubs, like I guess I'm encouraged. It seems like whenever I saw RB Leipzig, because they show them on TV here sometimes, normally only when they play against Bayern Munich or maybe a couple of other teams, but they looked entertaining. They got to the Champions League. They've done some stuff. I know it's not a really popular club in Germany because of kind of the way it came about, but I have to be optimistic in the appointment. I think that's, it's hard to imagine very many big name managers wanting to come to Southampton given the situation that we're in.
Yeah, completely. But I think if you look at Leipzig, obviously that's the job that he's probably most well known for. A lot of their players were quite young talents coming through. Red Bull obviously invested in the club, invested heavily into their youth sort of academy, I guess. But at the end of the day, you can have all this money sort of thrown into a club. You have to have a manager who can, coaching really is sort of vital, essentially. And, I think he definitely got the best out of the squad he had. To get promoted and then finish second in a top flight season is that's an unreal achievement. We can talk about sort of the financial backing of the owners, but to do that you have to have a fantastic coach, and that's clearly what Hasenhüttl is. Not even just for the Leipzig job. You look at his other jobs. I think he's taken quite a few low division teams in Germany up to leagues above. So he seems to be a good coach. The only thing that I'd say against him is he hasn't got Premier League experience. But is that too much of a necessity?
I mean, top flight experiences goes a long way, and he's also worked at some of the lower leagues. Like, he didn't just walk into a job where everything was kind of laid out for him. Just looking at some of the stats, every season, or every club that he's been at, not necessarily every season, but every club that he's been at, he's got a positive goal difference. And all of his win percentages are over 37%. And so, I mean, it doesn't, that's going up leagues, that is in between leagues, that is divisions all up and down, the spectrum of where he can coach. And that all seems positive. It seems like that's, he switched at one point. I read that he went from a 4-4-2 to a 4-5-1 and played heavy counterattacking. And the first thing I think of when I hear that is how we were under Koeman, and we'll see how it goes, and or we could wind up with Quique Sanchez-Flores, but as long as we don't go Big Sam, or I saw a David Moyes link earlier, I'll be just fine. Yeah,
absolutely. That's the exact same as me. That's what I was saying to you earlier. That's why I look at the replacements we were linked with, because obviously if it was one of the typical sort of save from relegation English managers, sort of post-Brexit, yeah.
Well, we just did that, right? We just got a guy off the managerial merry-go-round. We don't need to do that again. And it looked like some of the things I read from The Guardian and I think The Telegraph, it looked like the club is really looking at a long-term potential replacement. But I think you say that you can't ever say like, oh, we just want to stay up again because, we did that. But some things I worry about, I think I read it was £6 million they got to pay him off or something like that because they fired him, less than 6 months into a new contract. So that's money that could potentially now not be spent in January. But
yeah,
we've missed now on 3 separate managers. So it's going to be it's imperative now that we make the right selection, that person comes in and can kind of understand the structure of the club, work within that structure, but also work to kind of improve bring more youth through, develop the youth. And work kind of like within that structure and just hope that this is the right appointment, I guess. I mean, I keep saying that, but at this point we are hoping to have somebody in by Saturday. You hope Kelvin Davis has a kind of a good showing as an interim manager, and hopefully he stays on as some sort of assistant, because I think he is important to the club. I guess any final thoughts on Hughes or on the potential new guy as I try to piece this podcast together a little bit?
In terms of Hughes, look, he did what he needed to do last season. Personally, in the summer, I felt like we were, I want to say kind, sort of too nice. Because you look at the other teams, particularly Everton and West Ham, who had Allardyce and Moyes in. Obviously, Moyes and Allardyce came in and did their jobs well enough, but their respective clubs got rid of them in the summer, went with more sort of prospective managers, and it's paid off. Obviously, Manuel Pellegrini hasn't got the best out of his players yet, but it looks like West Ham are going to start climbing up the table, and obviously Marcus Silva's done exceptionally well with Everton so far. So that was kind of a signal towards the club saying, well, really, we shouldn't have offered Hughes the 3-year contract. We should have gone with someone else, said thank you for keeping us up, but we had to be ruthless, and we weren't. And obviously we paid the price now, but we're lucky enough to be able to get rid of him, bring a new guy in, and hopefully we can start picking up the results and climb up the table.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I sometimes forget is that he and Les Reed had worked together in the past. That was kind of his appointment, and I thought that Les Reed going would kind of give him a little bit of life and save him a little bit, simply because there wasn't anybody there to replace. There wasn't anybody there to choose a replacement for him. But at the same time, when you're a guy above you, the guy that hired you goes, oftentimes that means that your job is in jeopardy, and the club feels that this is the right time to do that. So, I think that he did well enough last year to keep us up. And like you said, we probably could have made a different decision over the summer, but they're making it now, and we just have to hope that we have enough time to turn this around.
Yeah, I definitely think we've got enough time, but the results need to start coming quickly, because we've got so many games in the next couple of weeks. But whoever it is, I mean, obviously it seems like it's going to be Hassan Hüttl, and I'm sort of excited, because Pellegrino was an appointment where we had no sort of idea how he was going to be, because he did well one season, but this is a manager who's got sort of raw, rich coaching pedigree, very much like Jurgen Klopp actually, and I've seen names being floated around how he's called something like Klopp of the Alps, because he's obviously Austrian.
Mm-hmm.
Klopp's German, started off in the lower leagues and then worked his way up just like Klopp, and kind of like David Wagner as well. So I'm optimistic. German managers seem to do all right in the Premier League. Okay, he's Austrian, but he's come from the Bundesliga, and I think it'll be a good appointment. I think it's a good sign from the club to appoint him.
All right. Well, Dan, thanks for jumping back on here with me, kind of last minute, but I appreciate it. And we'll do this again, probably not tomorrow morning, but definitely soon.
Yeah, completely. Definitely before this season's ended. Completely.
Yeah. All right, man. Thanks.
All right, no worries.
And that actually does it for episode 99 of the Southampton Delivery Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you've enjoyed it. Special thanks this week goes out to Dan Hargraves for talking to me not once but twice. You can find him on Twitter and Instagram at @DanHargraves_. You can also get more from him at The Saints View and at Talk Saints. Links are in the show notes. Do not miss out. Other people that this show could not happen without is you, listener. Thank you for your questions, for tuning in, for helping me out, for pointing me in the right direction when I get off track. I truly do appreciate it. If you'd like to follow the show on social media so you can keep up with us when we're not doing shows, because days only happen once a week, but there are 6 other days where the show doesn't come out, and sometimes we post stuff on there, and sometimes I find it, I think it's kind of entertaining and informational. You can do that at SFCDELL_IVERY on Twitter and Instagram, or at facebook.com/SFC Delivery. There is no underscore in the Facebook address. This show also relies on other people, including Matt Beeling of the We Are Southampton page on Instagram. For all your matchday edits, polls, competitions, and more, be sure to check out the We Are Southampton page on Instagram. Matt did the logo for the show, and he's been a guest in the past. And next week for episode 100, I'm happy to say he will be back here. So tune in after Cardiff to get his take on what's going on. Hopefully see a new manager and possibly get some announcements, because things are happening. The show is also partnered with the Southampton page on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. For all your Southampton FC news and needs, be sure to follow the Southampton page. All music for the show comes courtesy of the Free Music Archive at freemusicarchive.org. The intro song is Epic Song by Boxcat Games. The end of show credits that you're listening to right now that is actually going to be over is Aim is True by Poddington Bear. I also took a bunch of sounds from the YouTube audio archive to help make this episode. And then I recorded Skype, because that's what you do. If you have not done so already, be sure to subscribe wherever you are listening so you get future episodes of the podcast as soon as they are ready. If you're enjoying the show and you haven't done so yet, consider leaving a review on iTunes. We're 100 episodes in. It does help the show grow. I'm not saying you have to, but it would be nice. And last but not least, no matter what, thank you for listening. I truly appreciate your support. We will see you next week for episode 100. And until then, remember that together, we march on.